Thomas Matthew Crooks. Little is known about him as of now, and officials say the investigation is active and ongoing. The Pentagon confirms that the gunman has no military service affiliation. The attempted assassination was not only a harrowing experience for Trump, but also for the thousands in attendance, including members of the media, security, his own political supporters, and political allies.
The next shot, we knew that it was gunfire, and we just fixated on the president. And it was just at that moment when he grabbed his head and hit the deck, you could see he didn't fall down. He deliberately went down and, just highly concerned. We're sitting here watching the assassination of a president.
Joins us now. He was at the rally last night when shots rang out. So, Scott, at this point, what more are you learning about how this shooting unfolded?
Each hour that goes by brings more or wider street closures and more law enforcement to this area. We're in Butler County, which puts us just north of Pittsburgh, in a relatively rural area. They used a farm fairground for this event last night. A huge open space, usually reserved for farm shows. And the crowd that was here, in the thousands, when the shots rang out, was so disoriented, it's hard to erase from your mind's eye the images of people colliding with each other, trying to find where to go, safe harbor. There were so many people so tightly packed, there were no places for some people to go. The crowd was almost immediately evacuated out of here, and this has become an enormous, if not historic, crime scene and criminal investigation. I spoke to the local DA a short while ago who says there are whole different layers of government now involved with this, but that the feds are taking the lead. We know the reports the shooter was a 20-year-old from nearby Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. What remains unknown, though, is the motive. He was a registered Republican who had very little social media presence for somebody his age, and it is the question overarching so much of this. Why did it happen? And also, how did it happen? How could an event that is supposed to be uniquely secure become a shooting scene?
Yeah, Scott, there are so many questions. You and I have been discussing them literally since even before this event happened. We were talking about this event and then throughout the night. I'm wondering, given that you are still there in Butler, what is the mood like? How are people responding? How are you feeling today?
Like in a mass shooting, people are coming here hoisting flags or signs. Somebody just covered a police road closure sign with an American flag. I'll acknowledge that we've gotten some taunts, some jeers this morning, people saying the media is responsible. It's a small minority of people, but it echoes what we heard at the rally last night after the shooting, people directing their ire at the cameras and the news media here, just trying to ascribe some type of blame for that. But the local prosecutor who's served this county for 16 years acknowledged this is going to be a terrible association with Butler County, Pennsylvania's name, a stain on the county's name that this happened here. Not that this county bears blame for it, but this county is now associated with the first assassination attempt of a former president or sitting president in 40 plus years.
All right, Scott McFarland, thank you. As Scott said, the motive for this assassination attempt is not clear at the moment, but we are learning more about the moments leading up to the attack. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skagga has an update. She is here with me in Studio 57. So, Nicole, tell us what you've learned.
Yeah, just moments ago, Lana, we were told by a law enforcement source that officials have found explosive materials in the suspect's vehicle. Thomas Crooks, 20 years old, explosive materials found in his vehicle. That reporting from our colleague Pat Milton just moments ago, confirming what police had speculated about yesterday, that there were suspicious packages, perhaps something that might have detonated. They alluded to that in that late night press conference before even identifying the suspect. Overnight, we know law enforcement ran biometrics on the suspect who was not carrying an ID on him, swabbed him for DNA. Facial recognition technology positively confirmed the suspect as Thomas Crooks. Not much is known about him, but we are learning more about the weapon that he used, a semi-automatic rifle, an AR-15 that he used to shoot while laying down on that shed approximately 400 feet from the president's podium. Right now, investigators looking into whether that weapon was procured from a member of his family, legally purchased in Pennsylvania.
Now, Nicole, you heard Scott and I discuss the fact that he was a registered Republican. You mentioned he doesn't really have a social media presence. In so many ways, this might defy the normal expectations for the profile of the assailant. Do we know anything more in terms of theories that law enforcement is pursuing in terms of their investigation for a motive?
Officials immediately ruled out any foreign nexus to terrorism. They are looking at whether or not he was in communication with others, but at this point, no indication that he acted alongside others. It has the sort of look and feel, one official told me, of a lone wolf attack. But again, this investigation still active, still ongoing. We do know that bystanders spotted Crooks just moments before the rally began outside the Secret Service security perimeter of this rally. They alerted police, they alerted county police, the sheriff's office who was there, that they had seen this suspicious individual, that he looked funny to them. Of course, we know there is a sort of central command within these events. So that going up the chain of command, alerting Secret Service at that point, officials lost track of the suspect at this point for a few minutes. He surfaced again on the roof of that shed that we keep seeing in these Google Map images, approximately 400 feet from the stage. I am told that as he surfaced within seconds, counter sniper teams positioned within the U.S. Secret Service. There were 4 of them last night, 8 individuals total, took aim and neutralized the threat, shot the suspect dead.
And we heard them immediately afterwards, live as we were watching this, say that the shooter is down. Nicole, just very quickly, in the moments that we have left, I want to follow up with the latest information that you have, that they found explosive materials in the car. We also know that that they're doing a search of the gunman's home, but all that potentially points to trying to do something even larger than just taking aim at the former president. How is security being ramped up at other high-profile locations? We know that New York City stepped up security at Trump Tower, other landmarks here around the city, and the RNC is just around the corner in Milwaukee.
Yes, and we know that the RNC will look different this year. There are already indications that the perimeter is expanding, that some events will be moved inside. We expect Secret Service to say more in the coming hours about what higher security measures will be taken. We also know that in addition to the former president's security detail, other Secret Service protectees have had their details bolstered as well. The president, the vice president, the family.
All right. Nicole Skanga, thank you for all of your reporting. President Joe Biden is denouncing political violence following the assassination attempt on former President Trump.
Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening.
I'm going to bring in now senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang for more on the White House's reaction to the shooting. So, Weijia, we know that President Biden spoke with former President Trump by phone. What can you share about that conversation?
Well, a White House official shares that it was, quote, good, short, and respectful. So they aren't sharing many details about it, Lana, but we know that it was a cordial call between these two leaders. And when President Biden made a address last night to the nation, he said at that time that it was really important to him to try to speak with who he called Donald, referring to the former president, because he wanted to really bring down the temperature and, remind Americans of the humanity of this situation, and that these two men have a longstanding relationship with each other. And he wanted to obviously connect with the former president. And I think that's what we will see going forward. As you have been reporting, the Biden campaign has suspended all of its political activity for now, which means all outbound communications has halted. They have pulled television ads and will continue to do so. And they're really trying to focus on the president's role as president, as commander-in-chief, as consoler and healer-in-chief right now, rather than, focus on the campaign.
And Weijia, we are hearing that the president will be briefed again on the incident today. Is there anything more you can tell us?
That's right. He is, in fact, I think, still meeting with his Homeland Security team, as well as law enforcement officials here at the White House. He rushed back here to Washington, landed just after midnight from Rehoboth Beach, where he was supposed to spend the rest of the weekend. But instead, he will be here. He will be getting updates as available. And we don't know yet, Lana, whether we will see President Biden again today and whether he will give more remarks. But I am told through sources that it was him that immediately said, you know, I have to talk to the American public. He scrambled the pool together. He wanted to make comments last night, again, to try to put the focus back on trying to unify this country, and we saw that yesterday. So there's a good chance that we see him again today, although nothing has been officially added to the schedule, Lana.
All right. Appreciate you watching all of that for us. Weijia Zhang at the White House. Thank you. Well, from JFK to Reagan and now Trump, the long history of American political violence. We're going to speak with the presidential historian next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Former President Donald Trump has joined a list of U.S. presidents, former presidents, and presidential candidates who have been the target of assassination attempts. According to data compiled by Congress, 7 of the last 9 presidents, and that includes Trump while he was in office and current President Joe Biden, have been the targets of assaults, attacks, or in this case, an assassination attempt. Out of 18 recorded attempts on the lives of presidents and candidates, all but 2 involved firearms. And in every case but one, these assailants acted alone with no broad conspiracy. Joining me now is Del Quinton Wilbur. He is the Associated Press's Washington Investigations editor and author of Rawhide Down, the near assassination of Ronald Reagan. So, Del, thank you for joining us. The last time that the nation witnessed an assassination attempt on a U.S. president was Ronald Reagan in 1980. Talk to us about the historical significance of that event in terms of how it changed the country and how it gives us context for understanding what we witnessed yesterday.
Well, there are a lot of parallels between what happened in 1981 and yesterday in Butler, Pennsylvania. In terms of like the historical significance, that assassination attempt, Reagan came within an inch. The bullet was lodged an inch from his heart, a split-second decision, and a split second from dying, right? He lost more than half his blood that day. In that, the American public really had a lot of sympathy for Reagan. He built up a lot of sympathy, obviously, he has been shot, but also it built a bond with them because they heard about how courageous he had been. For example, he was cracking jokes in the emergency room before being wheeled into surgery. He saw his wife and said, "Honey, I forgot to duck." Reprising a line from Jack Dempsey, the heavyweight champion in 1926. He joked with his advisors before going into surgery. He gets into surgery and he wants to calm everyone down around him. So he dramatically takes off his oxygen mask, looks at them and says, "I hope you're all Republicans," to all the doctors around him. The public hears this and they truly realize that, this guy was pretty courageous. He couldn't fake that stuff during this event, being shot and nearly killed. And it really built a bond with the American people that lasted through the rest of his presidency. Reagan believed he'd been spared for a purpose and dedicated himself and his presidency to the threat of nuclear weapons. And you can see that through all 8 years of his term. What we don't know now, there was already an iconic image taken by an Associated Press photographer of Trump pumping his fist, blood smeared on his face, the American flag flapping behind him. Will this resonate in that same way? Obviously, Trump wasn't nearly as badly wounded. Reagan spent 13 days in the hospital. Trump spent a few hours, was hit in the ear, not the chest. We're much more polarized now. So what I'm looking for in the next 2 weeks is to see how does this resonate with the public and not just his core supporters, but everyone.
I want to dig into that more with you. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about how this happened, because much like President Reagan in front of the Hilton, former President Trump was in an open space. Also, the last two high-profile active shooting incidents at political events were in open spaces. I'm thinking about the 2011 shooting of Gabby Giffords at a supermarket parking lot in Arizona, and of course the 2017 shooting of Representative Steve Scalise. That was at a congressional baseball game practice in Virginia. Is it possible to secure public areas for these politicians, given the risks?
Well, there's always a give and take. So in 1981, John W. Hinckley, who wanted to shoot the president and actually thought about shooting Carter, who wasn't really motivated by politics. He wanted to impress Jodie Foster.
Right.
He got within 15 feet. 15 feet. That's a distance of a free throw in basketball. He got within 15 feet, unscreened, right? So that event, they push everyone further back. Everyone's further back. Now you can't get into an event after 1981 with the president without a magnetometer. You have to be scanned, everything. In this case, there's clearly something went wrong, because no one should have a free sight line on the president from 150 meters or so. That's how far away this guy was. And they're going to be doing some serious examinations, having pushed them back as far as they did and allowing this to happen. So there are similarities in that way, too. The gunman here was not screened. He wasn't in the event, right? Nor was Hinckley. Hinckley was behind a rope line meant to separate. It wasn't even a press line to separate the public from there. You're talking about the baseball game, the practice. Those were obviously lower level. They had protective detail there, which saved their lives. But in this case, there's also the push and pull always between the candidate and the Secret Service. If the Secret Service had its way, these would all be indoor events. Everything would be have a magnetometer. No one would get anywhere close to anyone. But that's not what the politicians want.
Yeah.
Reagan wanted to get out and go explore the world. Remember, Bill Clinton would jog on the mall. Right. So there's this, what do you allow, what you don't allow? And it's a risk assessment every single time they go out.
And Del, as promised, I want to get back to this place in history and what it might portend for the future, because as you mentioned, it can go one of two ways: a cooling of the temperature or a back and forth and an escalation of heated rhetoric. I'm thinking about Reagan cracked several jokes. You mentioned two of them, but it had the effect of taking down the temperature a little bit, of allowing the nation to breathe and see the president was okay. He was cracking jokes. Given what you're seeing now, do you think that our nation will head towards our better angels?
You know, it's much different times now. Social media, everyone thinks they have an opinion. Everyone's piling on. I'm on text chains with relatives and friends who think this is a conspiracy already. You know, the world is a much different place than it was in 1981. And Reagan understood his place in the world, and he was fundamentally a nice person, right? He was not, you know, he was a tough politician, but he also understood, like, he wanted to connect with people and how to do that. And, you know, he was a veteran of the movie industry in a way, like, you know, President Trump is also an entertainer. He understands that.
Right. They
come at things differently. So I have a hard time thinking, and we're so much more polarized now than we were in 1981, that I have a hard time seeing this playing out like it did then. Like, for example, Reagan was shot. He's in the hospital. The first visitor to see Reagan, who was not an immediate family member or a member of the administration, was his political rival, Tip O'Neill. And they prayed together.
A powerful reminder of politicians setting aside the blood sport of it when actual blood is involved. Del Quinton Wilbur, thank you.
Thank you.
Yesterday's rally was supposed to be a celebration to kick off this week's Republican National Convention, where former President Trump is set to officially become the Republican nominee. And the assassination attempt now lingers as a distressing backdrop to what's usually a festive affair. CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is in Milwaukee, the site of the Republican National Convention. So, Caitlin, let's start just with the RNC. Have you noticed any changes from a security standpoint since yesterday?
Good to see you, Lana. Well, we are inside the security perimeter for the RNC. You can see this arena behind me and the convention where Donald Trump will be nominated as the Republican nominee is right behind that. The security here has already been tight in anticipation of this week's events. We've been on the ground since Thursday. Security perimeters have been up all over the place. But of course, as the hours draw near, that security has intensified, because they were expecting all sorts of, this is obviously a high alert scenario before all of this happened. So as it stands right now, we haven't seen any kind of increased presence outside of what we normally would expect for an event like this. Not only thousands of people coming here, but of course, the Republican nominee, who is also the former president. Just a lot of security already in place here. But we do know that the Trump campaign is increasing security at their campaign offices. The campaign sent a memo to staffers urging them to stay away from campaign offices in D.C. and West Palm Beach, where they are headquartered, as they assess the threats there. They have also beefed up security. 24/7 guards are going to be at those offices as well. So that gives you a sense of what is happening there. But I would also point out that Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, who is expected to speak at the RNC just earlier this morning on Face the Nation, he is a member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. He described the RNC as being the safest place in America right now, given all of the security in place here.
And Caitlin, that's obviously a political event. The Biden team has responded to this attempted assassination by pulling down their campaign ads. What more can you tell us about how the Biden campaign is navigating this period?
Yeah, and we heard from the Biden campaign last evening that they would be pulling down ads and pausing all outgoing political communication. We also have learned this hour that Vice President Kamala Harris has canceled appearances scheduled for Tuesday in Florida. We know that the president, of course, called the former president last night and has been receiving further security briefings today. But Lana, this comes at a time where we all know the political environment has become even more heated. Actually, the Trump campaign has been telling staffers to not comment on publicly on the events of yesterday, to be cognizant of this heated political rhetoric moment that we are in. Earlier this week, I reported for CBS Mornings a story on the increased threats to local officials, those who are, at the basic levels of local government who are seeing increased threats. Of course, that is now more pronounced as ever at the highest levels here in Milwaukee.
Right. Caitlin Huey-Burns there for us in Milwaukee. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Face the Nation is next. I'm Lana Zach. We'll continue bringing you updates throughout the day. You're streaming CBS News 24/7.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team. Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS News 24/7.
Okay, let's go. You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going. The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
Good morning. As we come on the air this morning, the stunning events of last evening, the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump at a political rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, have shaken, angered,